Writer's Corner is made possible thanks to the following sponsors. Jaime's Haberdashery of St. Paul has become an anchor of the downtown business community. A modern store with classic decor, it provides everything in clothing, both custom and tailored, plus offers a huge selection for both men and women. There is now also a Jaime's in Red Wing. Calumet Editions, an eclectic publisher of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, introduced a new business model nearly a decade ago, in which the publisher and author work as equal partners in a joint venture. Their stable of authors have won numerous and prestigious prizes across literary forums. Where traditional publishers fail to see the value in projects, Calumet cooperates with his authors in realizing a book's potential.
Welcome to another session of Writer's Corner. We have two really good writers with us today, as we usually do, and I'll introduce them in a second. I'm Alan Miller, who hosts this, and on my right is Chris Norbury. Chris has written 4 books now, one of which is displayed right out here. It's a trilogy. His first 3 are a trilogy involving a jazz musician by the name of Matt Lanier, and they're thrillers, and they certainly are thrillers. I can attest to that. Chris also has, based on a long time that he spent with Big Brothers, has a book out called Little Mountain, Big Trouble, which is about the Big Brother experience, and that's out now, and he's working on yet another novel at the moment. He's also an accomplished golfer. I don't know about the accomplished, but really more important, and much of it is in this book, he really knows the Boundary Waters, spends a lot of time in the Boundary Waters, and if we have time, I'll read you an excerpt from this book. Linda Morrison is the first memoir writer that we have had on the show. And Linda has written a very personal, also tragic memoir called Dear Heroin, a memoir of goodbyes. And it's basically about her son, Michael, who was addicted and who committed suicide. And one of the ways that she has coped with that loss is by writing this book as a memoir. And I welcome you both here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Now, Linda, had you written previously?
No, I'd never written a book. I've been told over the years I was a good writer, but no, I hadn't. And my intention was never to write a book. After Mike died, a friend of his who works in a treatment center invited me down there to talk to the clients. And after some time, I did go down. He had been in a
lot of treatment centers and obviously hadn't worked.
Correct. He worked, he was in 8 treatment centers through the last 4 years of his life. And as I went to share, people would say, you should write a book. And I kept saying, nah, I can't do that. But I don't know, over time it just seemed like I should, and I took classes at the Loft Literary in Minneapolis and found a really great instructor who helped me with memoir. And from notes and memory, the book kind of wrote. And it was very healing for me and very cathartic to write it, to get it out there. And Mike himself told me at a time when he was sober that if anything ever happened to him, he wanted me to share his story. And again, writing a book never had crossed my mind. It was just mostly sharing it.
But it's very
verbally.
personal, and it had to be very painful at times also as well.
It was, especially some of the hard parts. His relapses and some of the things that he did was very hard.
Now, Chris, on the other hand, has written this trilogy about a jazz musician, and why don't you tell us a little bit about how you come to jazz?
Okay. Like most kids who get interested in music, at least it seems to me, we always had music in our household. I was talking about Connie Evingson earlier. She grew up listening to jazz, which is one reason she's a great jazz singer. I grew up listening to some jazz, some classical. I was a child of the 60s, so my sister had a record player, and she would bought all the Beatles albums and Beach Boys and Carole King and those things. And we just had music all around. My parents both were in the high school band. My sister and my brother also played instruments. That was just kind of a normal thing we did, but I was not really into jazz that much until I got to high school. And that was in the late 60s when groups like Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears came to be. And all of a sudden they were combining jazz with rock, and they call it jazz rock groups. And our high school started a jazz rock ensemble, and I thought, that's where I want to be. So I came to jazz a little bit late in my musical career, I guess you'd call it, but it just totally captured me, and that's the music I love.
What instrument did you play?
I was a trumpet player, and I wanted to be the next great trumpet player out of Minnesota. We went off to college with that goal, and I started competing with players who were had 5 years more experience playing their instrument, and they had known they wanted to be a professional musician and had practiced and put in the time. And I kind of burned myself out trying to catch up with them.
I did the same thing with the drums.
Yeah.
And I was a drummer in high school, drummer in college band and all. But, competing with guys who went on to become professionals.
Yeah.
I say guys because we didn't have lady drummers in those days, except my high school, where the best drummer we had was a young lady. And interestingly enough,
my mom was actually in the percussion section.
Is that right?
In the high school band, yeah.
You also are very involved in the Boundary Waters, which finds its way into your books in a really interesting way. Yeah. So talk about that.
Yeah. My dad is into boats and loved to sail, loved to canoe, loved to whatever. And he got it in his head to build a canoe in his garage back in 1965. You could get a kit from the Minnesota Canoe Association, and they had these wood strip canoes, which are basically strips of wood, long strips of wood about an inch wide that you staple together and glue and fiberglass over this template, and you come up with this wooden canoe that's very serviceable. So he built that in '65, put it on the car. We packed the tent and the kids into the car and went up to Sawbill Lake at the edge of the Boundary Waters, one of the entry points. And he took me on my first canoe trip when I was 9 years old.
And you got hooked.
I kind of did. It was one of those things where, this is sure is fun, and we went fishing, and I caught like a northern this big, and that was a big thrill for me because otherwise it was catching sunfish. But it stayed with me. He took me on many more trips. He took my brother on trips. I got my wife before we got married, and while we were married, took her on several trips, went on trips with friends, and then for some reason in 2008 I got into my head I wanted to try solo canoeing, which is just going by yourself, and because normally you go with 2 or 3 or 4 other people and you're either sharing a canoe or 2 canoes, and that really hooked me. So I've been doing solo trips now, about 20 solo trips since 2008. I try and go at least once a year.
And it found its way into your writing.
Yeah, so because that's kind of where Matt does some hiding in the first book to escape all the people who are chasing after him. And I thought, what better place to put somebody where you can't have a high-speed chase, because you can't fly in there. There's no motors allowed, so people have to paddle in or walk in. So he thought that was to his advantage, and didn't.
Descriptive language is really overwhelming in your books. It really is. And if we get a chance, I'm going to read a segment from it. Now, on the other hand, Linda, you said journaling was very important to you once you started writing. Faith to get you through the tragedy of losing a son. Mm-hmm. What else?
Well,
I mean, we describe yours as an inspirational story of coping.
Yeah.
With a tragic loss.
Yeah, well, we never expected to lose Mike. We always thought he would get into recovery and stay in recovery. And, you know, over the years, as a family, we were very supportive of Mike going to treatment. We were very supportive of him moving from the Twin Cities to Colorado to a sober community, Carbondale. And we always had hoped that he would stay in recovery. But I think being 23 and wanting to be normal, wanting not to have to be in recovery and not to go to meetings, I think he just got overwhelmed. Over the relapses that he had, he was very disappointed in himself. And he thought we were disappointed in him, and we weren't. And so we just continued to support him as best we could through his journey. He was 2 days out of Hazleton when he took his own life. He left a note, and he told us, "I want you to live your best lives because I have lived mine." And so that's what I try to do. I try to honor
the
his
demons
life.
get a hold of you, and as we've seen not only in your case but in reading of so many others, and they overwhelm you. Sometimes you can beat them, and sometimes you can't. Obviously, Mike can't, and yet you have other children. What do you have? 2 other sons?
I have two older boys.
Yeah.
And you know, we expected as parents for them to drink and party and stuff, but it never even crossed our minds that something like this, he would get hooked on it. But Mike had anxiety, he had depression, and when he used, it didn't give him a high, but it made him feel normal. It took away that anxiety. And that was something he had a hard time getting away from, because when he wasn't using, he would have that anxiety. And so that's what kind of drove him.
Can I ask if, because I'm familiar with basically alcoholics and the addiction there, but is heroin a different sort of addiction than any other drug or alcohol? Because it seemed like it was almost irresistible, and just it controlled Mike's life so much from what I understood, and he tried so hard to fight it, but it always pulled him back. Is it more powerfully addictive than other drugs that
Yes,
you know
it
of?
is.
Okay.
But it's also, once you're in recovery, it's hard to stay off it because of the pull and because of the part of the brain that it does work on. It works on the pleasure part of the brain.
Right, yeah.
And so, yeah, from that point.
Okay. Because I was really impressed that, to me, reading the book, it drove home the point that addiction is a disease. It's not a choice for people. They might choose to try it the first time, and some people don't get addicted to whatever, and some people do. But because Mike impressed me as just this incredibly larger-than-life human being who every time he went to a new place, he was the life of the party in a good way, in a positive way, very friendly, very outgoing, very helpful. And towards the end, I'm thinking to myself, he'd make a great character in a book because he's kind of this larger-than-life person. And that drove home the fact that that anybody can get hit by a disease. You might be the healthiest person in the world and get cancer. You might be the most wonderful, charming, have it all together person in the world, and you've got an addiction issue. So it doesn't matter. But he broke the stereotype of the traditional back alley addicts, and it was just amazing that he fought so hard. But he was just this wonderful, wonderful person, it seemed, when he was sober. So that really just was amazing to me to read that and
Which
process that.
says a lot for Linda's book.
Yeah.
Because all of that came out. I mean, you two didn't know each other before today. You have read the book, though.
Yeah.
And you got the emotion. You got the feeling.
And that's, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so you had a little help in writing, and you went to the loft, which is a great learning experience for anybody.
Yes.
And how did you get the book? What did you do from that? How did you put it together into a book?
Well, I started writing. So through the classes that I took, and I took several classes at the loft over a 3 or 4 year period, and I would just start writing. And I didn't do chapters, I didn't do anything. I just wrote. I wrote about my experience with Mike. I wrote about Mike's experience. I wrote about our family's experience. And I used my journaling. I journaled probably the last 9 or 10 months of his life. So I used some of the journaling from that. And I just kept writing till I got to a place where I needed help. And that's when I went to Wise Inc. Creative Publishing, and I had a couple of editors through them, and they helped fine-tune it, helped me get it into chapters and all that goes in with the craft of writing.
Which is really important for people who feel that they have a book in them and want to get it out. And here, you got it down, you got help with editors, professional editors, but it's basically a self-published book. What we would call a self-published book. It's not one of the big editors,
Right.
And yet it's a very moving book. And somebody designs a cover for you, somebody helps you put it together into a semblance of order. And how many years has it been out now? Several years?
It came out in 2021, but it took me from about 7 years total, just bits and pieces of writing it, until I got to the place where I felt enough. And again, I got the encouragement through the instructors from the loft to get it into the form that I wanted to see it in. So yeah, I mean, from the cover to the back cover to the spine to the lettering and the font size. I mean, there's a lot more to it than just writing the book and it kind of pops out, done. So, but an interesting process, a good process. And again, I didn't have any problems. Sometimes, editors leave, or you can, some things you just don't always go well. For me, working with them went well.
Well, that's very important. Now, Chris has had a varied career. I won't go through the whole career, but I heard a presentation that he gave last Monday night, and suddenly in 2008 he decided he wanted to write.
Yeah.
And here we are 4 books later, so why don't you tell us about that?
It almost feels like I started writing on a dare. I have what I call a short attention span. I like to occupy my brain as much as I can, and leading up to starting my writing career, I had been what people would recognize easily as a day trader, stock trader, investments, and doing it just for my own account. And I'd been doing that. I've been involved in finance and investing since the early 80s, so I'd been doing it for a while. I thought I knew what I was doing, but as you participate more and more, you realize that it's kind of a rigged game, and an individual is never going to have the same advantages.
You can't beat the system.
You can't beat the big boys. They're always one step ahead of you. And then the government got heavily involved in bailing out this company and not bailing out that company and changing the rules. And I just said, I have to scale back from this because it's like beating my head against a concrete wall. What else can I do that's equally as stimulating? Because I love the challenge of figuring out, analyzing investments and all these weird things that are kind of nerdish. But I needed something on that level, and I thought, well, people think I'm a pretty good writer, just writing emails and letters and things like that, kind of like you.
Yeah.
Why not give it a try? So I started writing short stories. I started doing some freelance work on websites, articles and things to pay for my habit of.
And you were encouraged also.
I was encouraged. Yeah, it took me a while, but once I submitted an article to the Boundary Waters Journal about one of my canoe trips, one of my solo trips. This was back in 2013, and the editor, publisher of the magazine liked it, and he said, here's $350, which to me, for a 5,000-word article, was gold. That was, I haven't made hardly that much on my books.
But your writing is very, very complete and intrusive.
Yeah.
And even Matt Lanier, your main character, he was camped on Big Island in Crystal Lake, 2 short portages out of Olson's outfit outfitters on Snowfall Lake and a popular first night stop for canoeists who had only a few hours before dark to get into the Boundary Waters. The nearest civilization, other than a few outfitters on the lakes near the access road, was the town of Ely, some 20 miles to the west. Secluded enough for most situations, except this was not most situations. Dealing with hungry bears, isolation, and harsh weather were child's play compared to fighting for his life against humans who intended to kill him. And that's the type of writing that goes throughout this thriller. It really catches the reader and keeps them, I won't read more, but I recommend fully. This is your first one, Straight River.
Yeah, first in the series.
And anyone who wants a thriller about the Boundary Waters, about life in general, about a musician of all things who gets caught up in a lot of ways. And there are numerous surprise endings here that really I found astounding. So highly recommended.
Thanks.
And if you want a good story, really, that's going to tug at your heartstrings and have you end up in tears, as people who have read this have told me, then it's Dear Heroin, a memoir of goodbyes. Are you writing another book?
I'm toying with the idea of doing that. I'm not sure yet if I want to do another memoir, if I want to do fiction. So it's kind of just brewing a little bit back there. But yes, I love writing. I've not done a lot of writing since it came out. So I've done more speaking and presentation engagements than probably the writing piece. But I do miss writing, and I enjoy writing. So I kind of have to figure out what direction I want to go with it.
Well, you've done a lot of speaking, though. You've done a lot of speaking to organizations.
I have. I've done several treatment centers here. I've done some in Colorado, where Mike was at one point. Teen Challenge. I can't think of the name of it now. Some churches I've been to. Again, treatment centers that, they find having me come in and share, it's eye-opening for the clients who are there.
That's what I've heard, that your speaking is inspirational for people who realize that even though Mike lost the battle, that they can win the battle. And
yes, that's very true.
Yeah.
If I could read just a piece from this. This book is dedicated to Michael Thomas, a great warrior who lost his battle with addiction. To the thousands of warriors who've lost their battles, and those who are still in the heat of this conflict. To all the loving families who have fought valiantly beside their sons and daughters, their siblings, their spouses, parents, grandparents, or friends. All families, to all families currently on the front lines of this devastating disease. I've been where you are. I know your pain, your sorrow, your losses. I stand beside you, not knowing how or when the tide may turn in favor of your loved one. I want you to know you are not alone. And I think that's what's important, is that others know they're not alone in this journey.
Important.
That people walk through it, they come beside you and walk with you. And that's really was paramount for us, is to have that support.
And your faith helped you also.
Yes. Yeah, my faith, I've always been a person of faith, but walking through something like this, you talked about higher power, you need something bigger than you to get through this. And so God has just been very faithful, and every step of the way, being with us, being with our family, just bringing people into your life that speak life to you and can say, I've been there. I can walk with you through this. So yes.
Now, what's down the road for you?
Well, I just found out that a short story I submitted to Twin Cities Sisters in Crime will be published in their latest anthology, which is always a fun thing to do. I've had another short story published in an anthology several years ago titled Cooked to Death, and it was all Minnesota mystery writers. David Housewright was one of the authors in that collection, and there's several of the ones that
David Housewright, who's one of our leading writers,
Yes.
and who will be here next month. He was on our first show, and he has a new book coming out, and he'll be here next month.
So that'll be out, I think, in the fall. And just to give you a little tease about the story, the title is Thunder Snow. So I just was playing with an idea that they were talking about it at one of the meetings, and I thought, boy, this might be kind of fun to try this thing. So when I do my short stories, I kind of go off in a different direction from a straight-ahead thriller like I've been doing. So I had a little fun with it and tried to make it a little bit lighter and airier, and had some fun with names and things like that. But that's coming, and then the next Matt Lanier novel is mostly in my head. I'm still kind of working out.
It'll take a while.
What the plot's going to come out. Yeah, I'm not a slow writer, so don't hold your breath, folks. It might be a year or so.
And I was struggling with my current effort, which is the third of a trilogy, and it's been going very slowly, so I didn't submit to Sisters in Crime. But the idea of what I was going to write is still there, and maybe someday.
Yep.
So in any event, we have really talked ourselves down to the last minute here. Anything you want to share with the viewers?
Well, I think if you have a story in you, write it. And it may not ever get published. It may just be something for yourself. But I think that's important, to get your story out there. And if it gets published, great. And if it doesn't, it's still you. It's still getting out there.
It can be cathartic.
Very cathartic, yes.
And Chris?
My advice, or my thing, is to give local, unknown, non-best-selling authors a chance. I've come across so many outstanding writers and incredibly good books of people who will never be famous, never be on the bestseller list, but don't be afraid to try your local authors. They write wonderful books.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing with us. We'll be back next month with another session of Writer's Corner. This is Alan Miller, and we're signing off for today.